Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum salam. Success.
Yes, yes. I don't know what all that was about. Looks
It's a
like some sort of invisible crossing signals here from the
yeah,
world of the unseen.
exactly. Computer takeover. But it's great to
Yes.
see
Well,
you.
it's good to see you. Assalamu alaikum, dear brother. Thank you.
Indeed. All
Yeah,
right.
let's see what we can catch up on here.
Yeah, yeah,
There's so much going on,
there is.
and uh, you know, I hate to say this, and people are going to get the wrong impression of me, I'm sure, because I'm always complaining. But yeah, and sometimes I am, the typical crotchety old fella. And yeah, I do get upset. And I guess us old guys, we do have a license to get angry. Okay. And I take advantage of that sometimes. And because, well, I'm choleric by nature, when I was in my young peacock years, I had this flaming, strawberry blonde hair, and it was just on fire everywhere I went. So that seems to be my nature, although for the most part, I'm pretty civilized. Um, but Dear brother, I'm becoming increasingly angry with our scholars who seem to have done a terrible job of preserving the truth. Now, I understand that apologies are in order because they're working from a certain ignorant purview, and they were handed a straw man in many disciplines. Then they ran with that straw man as if it was the truth. And their whole foundation of many of the doctrines that we've inherited these last 1400 years or so, um, they're in error. They're in error, but they've made an institution out of it. And it's very, very difficult to respect people who say they know the truth and have defended lies for 1400 years. Um, it's very difficult to respect them, brother, and I'm going to say that quite frankly. I came across a lecture that yet just yesterday that approaches the use of the term hoary. Now, you and I know that there are millions and millions of Muslim men out there who are expecting this great reward of the 72 virgins and whatever houris, with their big round eyes and great breasts, waiting for them, you see. And for some reason, they don't think they have to earn that privilege, which is bad enough to accept the imagination, but then to accept it without thinking that you have to earn it, that's another thing. I suppose you've heard me say this before. Anybody who wants 72 virgins is out of his mind. It's not in the right mind. Okay. And that's what we're talking about today. We're going to talk about
Yeah,
putting
yeah.
things in the right mind. And what I'm saying is, I'm angry because our scholars are not right minded. Okay. Now, I'm opening this can of worms for you. Okay. I'm kind of spreading it and getting ready for you to dig right in there with your big
hmm
spoon,
hmm
and straw, great big cups of greasy, grimy gopher. You remember that one? Dehydrated camel's feet,
Yeah.
all rolled up in a hot dog ball. Well, listen, that's pretty much the equivalent of the mental nonsense they've been handing us with these kinds of interpretations of the Holy Quran, all right, or even dare to approach the Quran with some sort of expression of interpretation through the Hadith. My God Almighty, I I I had to stop my wife from driving almost yesterday. I got so angry when I heard this. Now this was by this is the words of an unknown scholar and someone who's just like you or me. We're just plugging along, doing the best we can to come to terms with lies and the truth. Okay, so we're trying to set the lies aside and pull up the truth. Well, this word hurried has nothing to do with women, it seems. Now, I'm not going to go into it because, hey, I'm not a linguist. It's not my field. I don't know these things. Things I know, I like to talk about. Things I don't know, I like to question. And when I found out that this thing has been interpreted, this word that simply means to, I don't know, it's a kind of expansion of fullness of vision. It's difficult to put some of these Arabic terms into English words. I understand that. But to take this word, and which is an expansion of cycles of time and our ability to observe those cycles of time, and to turn it into a full-breasted, tantalizing female spirit, this is evil. It's worse than ignorance. It's evil. I'm going to call it what it is. And so when I heard this yesterday, if I could have hit a fire alarm bell and caused a 7-alarm fire, I would have. I'm telling you right now, I'm so upset with our academics. I'm so upset with our scholars for letting this stuff slide by, for misinforming the people and not making the corrections. There's a young fellow out there I'm hoping to work with sometime. His name is Shuaib. They calls himself the correctional officer.
Yeah, I'm familiar with him.
Yeah. I hope to.
The brother
I
from
hope
Africa.
to.
Yeah.
Yeah. I like this guy. He's in
Yeah.
Finland now, and I'm
Okay.
hoping to work with him because he's got a handle on this a little bit, and he's got this charisma.
Yeah.
See,
He's got the right spirit. Yeah.
which he's got the right spirit, and he can pull that generation in. So I'm hoping that I can bounce some ideas off of him in order to bring in the next generation into this expansion of our understanding of the cycles of rejuvenation and regeneration and life, the tree of life, because that's what this word has to do with. It's got nothing to do with a tantalizing female spirit who's ready
That's
to
right.
embrace you. Please, Muslims, please get this stuff right. Now, with that having been said, brother, how many more eschatological concepts have they misinterpreted and handed over to our brothers and sisters, handed over to us as if this was the gospel truth?
Yeah.
So irresponsible.
Yeah.
So irresponsible. And on the parts of some, I want to differentiate here. There are some up there at the top controlling the dissemination of knowledge. They are wicked. They do this with wicked intent. But most of our brothers and sisters do not have a wicked intent. They just follow blindly. Now we got people out there, praising Hamas. We got people waiting for Mahdi to kick butts. We got people waiting for Jesus to give the Pope's imprimatur on this whole thing.
Yeah.
Please,
It's amazing, isn't it?
brother, can you help us to
Yeah.
order our thoughts? Okay.
Yes.
Help us to order our thoughts. We got a couple words out there that have been misinterpreted and causing all kinds of chaos, not to mention the helpless position that puts women in. Okay, so I'm your wife, I'm loving you, I'm taking care of you, and you're waiting for houris? So what does that do? I'm going to tell you what it does. It divides man and woman right there.
Absolutely.
That's a division.
Sure.
That's a trick from Harut and Marut. Get it right, dear people. Get it right. You have been hoodwinked by the best hoodwinkers that have ever walked the face of the earth.
Fact.
Dear brother, help us to tell us what we need to do, if you can, inshallah,
Alhamdulillah.
to break away and to prevent this hoodwinking nonsense.
Yeah, several things.
Alhamdulillah.
Thank you for that. Great topic. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. We invite Allah's mercy into the conversation for quality assurance. And we are not going to be of those who are subjected to the hoodwinking.
Mm.
And the first thing I would suggest is that we stop calling these people our scholars. That's the first thing. These are their scholars, the ones who accept these narratives. And what they're doing, as the Quran states very clearly, is that they have thrown the Quran behind their backs. Yeah, the Quran speaks on that. Allah speaks on that. That there are groups of people who have thrown the Quran behind their backs. They reject the Quran, although purporting to be Muslims. And they have accepted as their books, plural, of guidance, a hadith. Now, the word hadith is in the Quran, as you know, in several places, but there's no such word as ahadith, the word that they use for their plural volumes of Bukhari, Muslim, Dawood, Abu Dawood, and so forth and so forth and so forth. There are approximately 70,000 hadiths that they accept as being legitimate enough to follow. It began as 700,000 when they were initially investigating the so-called words of Muhammad the Prophet. 700,000. It whittled down to 70,000. And every single one of these hadiths were established first in ancient Persia, Iran. None of these hadiths came out of Mecca. None of them came out of Medina. And all of them came 250 years after the fact, after the passing of the Prophet. So we have to consider all of those things when we're trying to figure out what happened to this body of scholars. This body of scholars themselves got hoodwinked, bamboozled, kicked in the pants, whatever comes along with that. And that happened, as you said, almost about 1,400 years ago, 1,300 for sure. But it was about 200, 250 years after the fact, after the passing of our beloved prophet.
Yes.
And the people who hoodwinked us did so for profit, not for Prophet Muhammad, for Profit.
Yes.
All right. The first dictionary to appear in the Muslim world came out of that same area of the world, ancient Persia. And that dictionary was called El-Ain, meaning the eye. That should tell you something right there.
Yes.
That became the evil eye for Muslims thereafter, because all Muslim scholars had to then refer to that dictionary in order to understand the Quran, when in fact that dictionary had established meanings for Quranic words that had nothing to do with the actual language of Arabiya itself. It had to do with Persian interpretations of the Arabic. So when we started to accept meanings for what a Muslim is, or what a mu'min is, or what a hori is, or what or whatever, it became their meanings, not the meanings in the Quran itself. The Quran explains itself. It doesn't need an ancient Persian to explain it. It doesn't need a fire worshiper to explain it. See? So we're talking about that one in the Quran who himself says to Allah that you created me min nar, you created me from fire. So we need to consider that, that jinn. And now, as far as the eschatology is concerned, they made that much more important than living everyday practical life. So people are more concerned now with these end of the world type of tales and narratives that they become so afraid of, that they become frozen in those ideas. And then you have those who think they're doing so well that they're going to get these great gifts after they close their eyes on this physical world. And I have some bad news for them. There's no such thing as 72 horis that you're going to inherit as a gift from Allah for being a good guy. You know, and I thought Correct me if I'm wrong, doctor. I thought paradise was for males and females. So
That's what my understanding is.
what's her reward?
Yes, yes,
Who
yes,
is
of
this
course.
subjective God that they worship, who only
Hmm.
favors the men with these tremendous gifts of lustful pleasures? And
Hmm.
the thing about the Houris, for those who don't know what we're talking about, it is
Yes.
said that the Houris are these virgin women, 72 in total,
Mm.
who you are to have all of your sexual exploits built around, and your every fantasy can be fulfilled through these horror. It's actually where they get the English word whore.
Yes, yes,
Yeah, Whore.
yes,
But
yes,
the
that's
Hori, Houri, these are these women again who are 72 in total, and one
hmm
man who's lived the righteous life, air
hmm
quotes, will have access to these 72 virgins. Now,
mm
by calling them virgins, what you're actually doing is centering the activity around their private parts.
hmm
So you'll have 72 private parts
mm
to indulge in.
hmm
Once you close your eyes in this world and you open up your eyes into paradise, here you are and here they are, right? All
mm
right. So you can go into these women, they say, as many as you want every
mm
night. And in
mm
the morning, somehow, some way, some magical way, they become virgins all over again.
Yes.
They are always in a state of virginity, waiting for
mm
you.
mm
And their skins are see-through. I don't know how many people have read that. Their
mm
skins are actually transparent. And I
mm
said to myself, as beautiful as they're painting these women out to be, I
mm
would freak out if a woman came in front of me and she was transparent. I'm looking at her blood vessels and her heart beating, her spleen and her
Yeah,
intestines.
yeah.
That's scary to me. That's like looking at a person who's been skinned alive. I
hmm
don't want to see all
hmm
that, you know.
Sure.
But anyway, we accept these things because we have been trained as a Muslim public to not accept the Quran on the grounds that the Quran asks us to accept it upon, and that is the grounds of rationality,
Mm.
what's reasonable. The Quran is an appeal to the human aql, the human ability to reason, to think, to weigh the truth against the falsehood, and make a
Mm.
decision, make a cogent decision. We're not trained to do that. As Muslims, again, on the most part, at least for the last 1,000 years, we've been trained to accept what we believe to be the Quran, but not to accept it with our reasonable brains, to accept it with our foolish hearts.
Mm.
The proclivities that we harbor that are antithetical to the Quran, but because they're being presented in an emotional package, we would love to have 72 versions for some reason. That's the reason why we accept it, because they're appealing to a part of the brain called the limbic brain. And the
hmm
limbic brain controls human emotionality and human memory. It's also known as the midbrain out of the three brain theory
Yes. Mm.
that was postulated by um, Dr. Paul MacLean in 1967. This
hmm
was his theory that the
Yes.
human brain has three parts that begin with the instinctive brain, also called the reptile brain, the reptilian brain.
Yes.
Now, I want the audience to follow me on this carefully. The reptilian brain, they say, is the oldest part of the brain, and they call it the reptile brain, or the R complex, it's also called. They call it that because it governs over the instinctive drives in humans, meaning those things that you do unconsciously, like swallow, your eyes tear up, your heart is beating, your blood is flowing. It's all of that is happening without your conscious input on the most part. So that's the capacity that was given by Allah to every reptile. Reptiles don't depend on how they feel about a thing. And, you know, they don't worry about what you're going to think about what they're going to do to that infant if they can get close enough to swallow him whole. They'll just do
Mm.
what their instincts tell them to do. and
Yes.
not feel any regret, not
Mm-hmm.
feel anything about it, not feel any way about it. They just do whatever their instinctive drives tell them to do. And instincts are all about survival.
Mm-hmm.
All right. That's the first level, the instinctive brain, fight or flight. I'm going to fight if I think I can win. I'm going to flee to live for another day because I know I can't beat this dude. And that's in every creature. It's in the reptile, it's in the animal, it's in the mammal,
Mm-hmm.
both animal and human.
Mm-hmm.
The instinctive brain is the first of these three brains, again, that was postulated by Dr. Paul MacLean. Now, the second brain, the brain in the middle, is the limbic brain that we've been talking about. And it governs, again, over emotions and memory, those two things. So for that reason, they also call it the mammalian brain, because all mammals possess that second brain.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're a mammal, such as a cow or any other mammal, mammals are just creatures that were born out of a sac, out of a womb. In other words, reptiles are born out of eggs, so they don't count as mammals. But
Mm-hmm.
all of the other creatures that we know who are born out of, whose mothers get pregnant, like a cow gets pregnant and has a calf and so forth. So all of these creatures, they are called mammalian creatures or mammal creatures, and they're the ones who possess this limbic brain. But that's as far as the common animal goes. They have the instinctive brain, and then they have the mammal brain, and that's it. They don't have what the human being has been gifted with, the third brain called the neocortex, which is the
Mm-hmm.
thinking brain.
Mm-hmm.
So the Quran is addressing all three brains,
Yes.
but it gives preferential treatment to the aql, the reasoning, the thinking brain.
Yes.
And Allah asked the question along the way, do you not reason? Do you not use your reasoning capacity? That's what makes you truly human. If it weren't for that, you'd be just what the average mammal is, or what the average reptile is. I didn't create you to be on the level of the reptile and the common animal. I created you to be human so that you can fulfill your role as Khalifa and many other titles that Allah has given us. See? So because we're not understanding this, and because the manipulators of this world, they manipulate the language so that the language is directed towards those two brains, minus the thinking brain. The language that they give us that has been carefully crafted by the invention of these ahadith, that language is manipulative language that is
Yes.
designed to influence you on the level of your instincts, to make you think that somebody's always after you. You always have enemies out there waiting to get you. That sparks and ignites and activates the reptile brain in you. The entire Muslim population now has been motivated and manipulated through the appeals, through media and through other sensationalism,
Mm-hmm.
appeals to the instinctive drive, the fight or flee drive.
Mm-hmm.
The Muslim is the enemy.
Mm-hmm.
Always be on the alert when you're in the public, especially if you're around Jews,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
because they're out to get you. And the
Mm-hmm.
Christians, they're out to get you. So this out to get you thing that we've been under for the past 1,000 years since the
Mm-hmm.
Crusades, this out to get you, they don't like you, your God is a demon
Mm-hmm.
mentality that they've been promoting now for, again, about 1,000 years or so. 600 to 1,000 years ago. They've been promoting this.
Sure.
So it has activated, it has actually crystallized the reptilian brain in most Muslims. So most Muslims are fight or flight mentalities.
Yes, yes. If I can just interrupt for a minute because
Please.
this is timely. When I became a Muslim, it was the result of this kind of conditioning. I'm going to tell you. Okay. I had read every book in my library that I had taken with me to Malaysia when I moved there over 20 years ago. I had quite a substantial library. And there was only one book I didn't read, and that was Al Quran. I had a copy of it,
Ah,
Yusuf Ali's translation, but I had not read it yet. So I decided one Christmas I'm going to read this thing. And I went at that book specifically with a preconceived idea in mind. I'm going to find Satan. I'm going to find how it is that Satan convinced billions of people to follow this book.
Yeah.
That was in my mind because I
Yeah.
already had this crusader mindset, you see,
Yes.
as it, and I had left the church, but it was still with me, you
Yeah.
see. And so that's why I'm breaking. That's why I'm
Yeah.
bringing this up
Proof.
because these
That point is
ideas
proof.
run deep,
Yeah.
and they cause us
Yes.
to react.
Absolutely. So the reason why I brought up the term ahadith,
Hmm.
which is not in the Quran, the term hadith is in the Quran,
Hmm.
and it's already a singular and plural word,
Mm-hmm.
hadith, just
Mm.
by itself.
Yes.
They invented the word ahadith to
Mm-hmm.
represent the plurality of hadiths, those 70,000 that I told you they now accept.
Yes. Yes.
In the
Mm-hmm.
Quran, Allah uses the word hadith to explain the Quran itself. He said, it is ahsanul hadith. It is the best of the hadith.
Yes.
And then Allah asked the question right behind that, and which hadith will they believe in after this?
Yes.
And
Yes.
Allah speaks about the hadith of men in the Quran that represent the opposite of what the Quran as hadith is representing.
Yes.
So these are people, again, they're scholars. They are actually followers of the hadith and not necessarily followers of Al-Quran. If they were following Al-Quran, they'd be following Al-Quran as the guidance from Allah.
So this is the point of discernment you're making here. If they're following a hadith, they cannot be our scholars.
No, no,
See?
indeed. No, indeed. It's like going to New York University and saying that your professor is from, University of
Yeah.
California.
Yeah. Yeah.
No, that's
Sure.
not your professor. He's a professor. He's not your
Mm-hmm.
professor because he's not professing what it is you're
Yes.
learning.
Yes.
No.
Yes.
And
Okay.
and because we don't, who is in their right mind? Who has the time to go through, comb through all of those hadiths, those volumes? You see them.
Uh-huh.
They like to bring those volumes and put them behind them when they're on their YouTube videos.
Yes.
They
Yes.
like
Yes. I
those
see that.
that
Not
they've
at all.
never read. Most of them,
Yeah.
they've never read that stuff, but they
Yeah.
like to get you to believe that they're scholarly, that they have all of this knowledge behind
Yeah.
them in their heads.
They got all those books up there without any dog ears.
Yeah, no dog ears, nothing but dogma. They haven't
Yes.
cracked a single one of them. Some of them might
Mm-hmm.
still be wrapped in plastic for all we know. So
Sure.
these are people who are trying to seduce you into believing
Mm-hmm.
that they are true scholars of
Mm-hmm.
Islam, when
Mm-hmm.
in fact they are puppets and parrots
Mm-hmm.
of their scholars.
Yes.
See? And
Parrots.
they're really just regurgitating what they've been taught, what they got
Yes.
their degree in many cases. So now, if the truth does come to these people, these false scholars, this false light, and you've spent how many years getting that degree in Islamic, whatever it
Mm-hmm.
is, right? Some of them get degrees in Islamic eschatology, believe it
Sure.
or not. Their major concerns are life and death. What
Mm-hmm.
happens,
Yes.
that
Yes.
kind
Yes.
of thing. Where do we go? Heaven. What's heaven about?
Mm-hmm. Right.
There was a book, a very famous book. I forget the exact
Mm-hmm.
name of it, but it had to do, I think it was, it's had something to do with death. I forget exactly what it became a very popular book back
Mm-hmm.
in the 70s and 80s, I believe. uh The Spectacles of Death. That's the name of
Mm-hmm.
that book.
Okay.
And it was the most frightening thing I've ever read at the time.
Mm-hmm.
I read it in my early Muslim career, my
Mm-hmm.
early Muslim development.
Mm-hmm.
And page after page, doctor, is nothing about what's going to happen to you bad
Mm-hmm.
for going to hell.
Mm-hmm.
And you can go to hell for any number of reasons.
Mm-hmm.
You can be a good person who hasn't taken Shahada and go to hell because you didn't take Shahada, even though you didn't know what Shahada was or you were never introduced to Shahada. You're still going to hell because you didn't
Mm-hmm.
find out about Shahada,
Mm-hmm.
Shahadatain, or whatever they're calling it. So it's a crazy, crazy
Yes.
system that has been established to bypass the reasoning part of the brain. You see?
Mm-hmm.
So we have those two parts of the brain operating: the reptilian brain, fight or flight, instinctive brain. Then above it, you have the limbic brain, dealing with emotional issues, and it also clocks memory into. Now, this is not hard and fast because different parts of the brain actually do things that the other parts of the brain do. But essentially speaking, one deals with instinctive drives and the other one deals with your emotional drives. Now, above that is the crowning glory, according to Dr. Paul McLean, and that is the neocortex brain, which regulates moral and rational thinking and decision making. And it is always present. It's always supposed to be in the now. It's not supposed to be in memory lane or memory lane. It's supposed to be right now so that you can deal with the present day circumstances in front of you pragmatically. Right. All right. So that's supposed to be the brain that is ruling in us on a daily basis. But that's the very brain that is given a back seat, especially in religion. Religion wants to hook you on fear, grief, and what my wife calls worryation.
Worryation. Oh, I like that word.
Yeah.
Worryation.
Yeah, they
Oh
were
my God.
just stuck.
She gets a gold medal for making that word up.
She does. Yeah. I think her mother used to use it. Her mother is from the South.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well,
Southern
we'll
people
pass it to her then.
Southern people have a lot of words that they make up along the way because they're not formally educated, you know. So, you know, you're causing me a lot of worryation and oh dear, what's the other one? I forget the other one.
I like that.
Yeah. In any case, that's the brain, the crowning achievement, the neocortex. Neo just means new. It's the newest of the brains to become activated in history. Okay. Now, there is a fourth part to the brain that we're not going to discuss today, but let it be known that there's the pineal gland also that they call a vestigial organ. That's what science is trying to call it, a vestigial organ. And yeah, we used to use it, you know, but it became calcified through the non-use of it because it's no longer necessary. It's connected to cosmic phenomenon, is connected to a super kind of intuitive ability that people used to have, you know, but it's dormant now. So it's just you know, it's like the whatever.
Dormant.
Yeah, it's dormant.
It's still intimately connected with the diurnal rhythms, which allow us access to this eternal recycling.
Sure. And wakefulness and sleep and all of those things are still operating, you know.
It's a kind of a gateway or a
It is
passageway.
absolutely a portal to that which is beyond even the ability to reason. It's tapped into the ability to actually predict. I believe it's a capability that the prophets must have had to receive revelation in the first place.
Yeah.
Because they weren't being taught from a book.
Well, you see, the point there that you're getting on is the Qibla, and that is this absolute central point of the path of our return journey to our Maker. So it is this organ that seems to be, and it's centered, you see, it's centered right there in the center of the brain, and it's seated in this kind of little special chamber, if you will, well protected, and it kind of balances everything around it so that everything becomes centered. So when you see these Kung Fu guys and Tai Chi guys, they're doing all this stuff, and they're going,
centering, bringing it back to the center. That's right.
So this is consciously getting centered. Now, I see what you mean here now, why you're bringing this back up, because we need to put it in proper perspective, because the propaganda machine that's been wielded against human beings, humanity, for eons now, it seems, through the mystery religions in particular, it addresses the reptilian and the midbrain primarily to prevent us from using the rational brain, or to limit the use of the rational brain just to those things which are of material benefit.
Material benefit to those who are in positions of power and control.
Yes.
And see, scriptures address these issues if we're talking about, say, the book of Genesis in the Bible,
Mm-hmm.
it addresses these same three brains, I believe,
Mm-hmm.
in speaking on Adam, Eve, and the serpent.
Yes. Yes.
All right.
Yes.
So
Mm-hmm.
what happens is that God creates Adam,
Mm-hmm.
he puts him in the garden, he creates Eve from the rib of
Mm-hmm.
Adam,
Mm-hmm.
and he tells them to be fruitful and multiply and to not eat of a particular tree. Doesn't say anything about apples. It just says fruit.
Yeah.
Do not eat of the fruit or partake of the fruit of the forbidden tree in the midst of the garden. All of these other trees you got access to.
Mm-hmm.
Just don't mess with the one in the middle. Now, you know what happens when a child is told not to touch something.
Yes.
Hear how many
Yeah.
other toys he has. His mother said, well, don't touch that toy.
Yeah.
You know, don't even unwrap its package. You know,
Yes.
boy,
Yes.
as
Yes.
soon as mama's out of the room, he's over there trying to get that
Of
little,
course.
yeah,
Of course.
that sticky tape off that package
Mm-hmm.
and see what that is, because Allah created the human being's curiosity to
Mm-hmm.
be that potent and that powerful.
Yes. Of course.
So if Adam slipped in that regard by doing something that Allah asked him not to do, it's really the fault of the person who created Adam, because he put that curiosity in that kid.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
He should have never said anything. He would have been happy playing with all of his other toys.
Yeah. Right. Right.
Yeah. But the point here is that the Bible, unlike the Quran, says that God put Adam into a deep sleep. Now, if Adam represents the neocortex in this regard, the
Mm-hmm.
thinking brain, the moral
Yes.
rational brain.
Yeah.
And the Bible says that that brain was put into a deep sleep. And the God that they're speaking to, I don't believe is the Allah as we know him to be the source creator. I believe they're
Mm-hmm.
dealing with another set of gods that we're
Mm-hmm.
thinking is the source creator, but are
Mm-hmm.
really just force creators. They're forces that are
Mm-hmm.
creative.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
In fact, the
Mm-hmm.
term Elohim that they're using and translating as a singular God is a
Yeah.
plural word.
Mm-hmm.
It means many gods. El
Mm-hmm.
means God. Elo means God. Him is a plural suffix, which means
Mm-hmm.
many gods.
Yes.
All right. So that one put Adam into a deep sleep.
A coma.
That's what it would be in our day and time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Now that left Eve vulnerable. So who is Eve?
Mm-hmm.
Eve is that midbrain, that emotional brain,
Yes.
that emotional memory brain. She said, well,
Mm-hmm.
I can't eat of it because God told us. See, that's her memory talking.
Mm-hmm.
God said,
Mm-hmm.
in the day that we eat thereof, we shall surely die. And the serpent
Mm-hmm.
said, he was just joshing. He just
Mm-hmm.
messing with you. You the newbie. He's just messing with you.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Right.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
You will not surely die.
Mm-hmm.
Your eyes will become open, and you shall
Mm-hmm.
be like the gods, plural. You see
Mm-hmm.
it there? They're telling you
Yeah.
what Elohim is. You shall be like the gods, the council.
Mm-hmm.
You're
Yes.
dumb now. He's keeping you
Mm-hmm.
stupid on purpose. Join us. You know how the evil people say,
Mm-hmm. That's true.
join us, you know.
Yes. Yes.
Now, the serpent obviously represents the reptilian brain,
Mm-hmm.
that
Mm-hmm.
portion of the brain. So what is happening here is that we have a scenario where if the moral rational part of the brain that makes executive decisions is shut down or turned off or made dormant,
Yes.
meaning that the people are encouraged to not use their reasoning,
Yes.
but to accentuate the emotional self.
Mm-hmm.
And then if the emotional self is not getting you what you want, then revert to the instinctive self. I need to survive. That's why I did that. I saw a little girl. I say little girl.
Mm-hmm.
She couldn't have been more than 21, 22 years old. She was trying to justify all of these smash and grabs. She was
Mm-hmm.
in the Best Buy in some state, I forget which state, and they were
Yes.
just helping themselves. And
Of
you see
course.
the camera just recording all of them with big Roku televisions, and
Mm-hmm.
you know, and nobody was stopping them. They're told not to stop them.
Mm-hmm.
If the security guard who's getting paid to secure the place, if he stops them, he can get arrested. He can be
Yes.
fired and arrested.
Mm-hmm.
And what their idea is that the store has, insurance and what. So these young people, they've been told that. So now they're
Yes.
going in just carte blanche, just take it and don't worry about it. If you want to, go
Mm-hmm.
ahead and take it. And she is saying that because Black people have been exploited for the past 300 years and all of that, and we're not getting our reparations, well, this becomes our reparations. We're just going to go and smash and grab the jewelry and
Yeah,
all the rest of the stuff. And she's using that to justify being a criminal,
sure.
not recognizing the damage that she's doing to her own soul. And
Yeah.
she's going to pass this on to her children if she has any.
Mm-hmm.
Now, that's the emotional brain and the reptilian brain working together.
Yes.
Just like in the Bible, Eve was coaxed into working with the serpent by following his suggestion to partake of the fruit. See? So
Mm.
the Bible is not talking about fairy tales, it's talking
No.
about deep science and wisdom
Yes.
that needs to be decoded. And
Yes.
that's true for what we're learning about this eschatology subject,
Mm-hmm.
that these matters pertaining to life and death and heaven and hell, they need to be decoded.
Yes.
The,
Thank you
the
very much.
heaven and the hell that scriptures are talking about happens right here first.
Yes. Yes, it
And Allah
does.
says in the Quran, if you don't get that paradise, that Jannah at least, here, there's no hope for you receiving it when you die.
Mm-hmm.
How many Muslims have read that?
Mm.
You have to first achieve a modicum, at least,
Yes.
of Jannah
Mm-hmm.
here
Yes.
for you to qualify for the ultimate Jannah
Yeah.
there. So this
Yeah.
term akhirah, which they're
Mm-hmm.
translating as the hereafter, has nothing to
Yes.
do with being here after anything. It has to do
Mm-hmm.
with being here in the moment as you prepare for the next moment. And the next moment is called akhirah.
Yes. Yes.
When we started, it was a little after 10 a.m. Eastern Standard
Mm-hmm.
Time, and it is now, close to 11 o'clock a.m.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, this is the akhirah compared to the 10 o'clock moment when we began.
Yes, of course.
Anything that comes after a thing is akhirah,
Mm-hmm.
with the ultimate akhirah being after we close our physical eyes on this life and Allah takes us to wherever, as he says in the Quran, when Muhammad the Prophet was asked about that akhirah, he said, no eye has seen, no ear has heard. In other
Mm-hmm.
words, I can't tell you about what happens after I die.
Mm-hmm.
I haven't been there. I haven't done that, and I haven't got a t-shirt to prove it that that
Mm-hmm.
I know what that is. That's
Mm-hmm.
all up to Allah. What happens to you after you leave here? But they have made the average one of us so preoccupied with death
Yes.
and dying and being afraid of dying,
Mm-hmm.
when death is not something that you fear unless you know you've been an evil, wicked
Yeah,
person, then you have
that's it.
something to worry about. And a lot of people fess
Mm-hmm.
up their crimes and sins on their
Yeah.
deathbeds. But if you're not in that particular situation, that shouldn't be your worry, because Allah did not create you to be a reptile on this earth in a human
Well,
form.
you bring to mind something here that I just want to kind of reiterate
Mhm,
so that it crystallizes in the minds of our listeners here, because
mhm.
we're involved in an ongoing process of expanding and explaining the allegorical and metaphorical language of the scripture.
Yes.
And this can only happen by God's will. And if God's will is not involved in your daily consciousness, then what's happening is that you become subject to the propaganda, which is fixing your consciousness on the fight and flight, the reptilian, and on the
Yes.
feelings,
Yes.
the emotional brain. And so what's happening, if you're using your rational brain, you're using your rational brain only to apologize for the positions that those two other parts of your brain
Yes.
are accepting and
Yes, indeed.
communicating with. So
Indeed.
you're communicating with yourself, and and yourself, that dialogue is limited to whatever's been put in there by the propagandist.
Yeah. Now you got
Okay.
it. You got it.
So
Yeah.
I think we've got that crystallized here. And this has happened to the Ummah because the Ummah has been prevented from using the rational brain
They've been
by
hypnotized,
the same approach to
subliminally
propaganda.
seduced, subliminally seduced.
Yes, subliminally seduced.
Their subliminal minds, their emotionality, and their fight or flight mechanism in the brain has been subliminally seduced.
Seduced. Yes.
Lemon, lemon,
Yeah.
the lemon, the lemon in
Yes.
them, the sour
Yes.
in them
Yes.
has been seduced. Now, it's in the Quran in different words. It's in the
Mm-hmm.
Quran when Allah is discussing a particular three levels of the soul, the nafs,
Mm-hmm. Yes.
and they are called nafsin la amara,
Mm.
the desirous
Mm-hmm.
soul, they call it, or the commanding soul, they also call it, because it's dealing with the instinctive drives. Your
Mm-hmm.
instincts are what commands you. Just stop eating and see how long it takes for that instinctive reptile brain to kick in and say, if you don't eat, you're going to die. You're going to be
Mm-hmm.
miserable. So you're going to
Yes.
go find something to eat. You're going to be thirsty. You're going to find something to
Mm-hmm.
drink.
Mm.
So the instincts have a command over you. They are the Amir in your body, in your
Yes.
biology. So
Mm-hmm.
Amara, Amir,
Mm.
commander,
Mm.
admiral. See, admiral, Amir, that's where it
Mm.
comes from
Mm.
Amir, admiral, right? Now, then above that, Allah speaks about nafsin lawama. That's that
Mm.
middle brain.
Mm-hmm.
And it's the brain that hesitates before acting.
Ah.
It wants to know, am I doing the right thing? So it
Mm-hmm.
does. Lawama is the middle brain, the limbic brain, the emotional memory brain, because it's about to
Mm-hmm.
do something and then it remembers what happened the last time it did that.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Yeah, and or it remembers the last time you did it and you told them
Mm.
about it. Because
Yes.
human beings are the only creatures who can live from other people's experiences. We don't have to make the mistakes. Animals
Yes.
have to make the same mistakes over and over again
Yes.
to know, don't go in that direction. There are lionesses in that direction.
Yeah. Right.
But the
Mm-hmm.
human being can just hear about it or read about it and say, I'm not going to Chicago.
And go there. Yeah. Right.
You know, hell is breaking loose in South
Mm-hmm.
Side
Yeah.
Chicago, West Side Chicago. I'm not going to
Mm.
Chicago this year.
Mm-hmm.
So that's that middle brain,
Yes.
lawama. And lawama is where we get the English word lemon,
Mm.
because the lemon, it looks juicy. It looks
Yes.
bright and sunshiny, but if you bite
Yeah.
into it, oh God,
Mm-hmm.
I got to put
Mm-hmm.
some sugar in this. See,
Yeah. Yeah.
I got
Yeah.
to mix this
Mm-hmm.
up with something.
Mm-hmm.
So that's how the emotional brain is. You bite into a lot of emotional memories and issues of things, but you gotta sweeten it up. You can't just accept everything because you remember it. You know, you remember
Mm-hmm.
death. You remember friends and loved ones dying. You don't want to keep your
Mm-hmm.
mind there. So it's like the lemon.
Mm-hmm.
You may squeeze a little bit when you need it or whatever, or mix it with
Mm-hmm.
something that makes it more palatable. So that's that middle brain, nefsin la amara. That's a part of the soul
Mm-hmm.
we're talking about, the nefs.
Mm-hmm.
Then on top of that, you have nefsin mutmainna.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my goodness.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Now that's the brain that invites you into Allah's paradise,
Mm-hmm.
into Jannah among his ibad, his workers, they call them.
Mm-hmm.
And that's indicative of the neocortex, the rational brain. See, the moral and rational brain is what Allah designed for you to make it into Jannah, not based on how you feel about it, but based on what you've been thinking about it. Because if you think hard enough and long enough, you're going to decide what's right and what's wrong.
Yes.
And then you are challenged
Yes.
with doing the right thing.
That's
And
correct.
that's what earns you paradise.
And you're challenged to do the right thing, which is the performance of justice, irregardless of how you feel about it.
That's correct. Now you got it. You got it. We're on the
Mm-hmm.
same page, man.
Yeah, there you go.
So
Yeah.
we may pick this topic up again next week,
Yes.
or facets of it.
Inshallah.
I think it's a fascinating topic,
Yes.
and it's a
Yes.
pragmatic one that people can actually walk away and use. So
Yes.
in my last statement to this subject, I would say to human beings, become more conscious of those 3 levels of the brain. Be more conscious when you're doing something for survival's sake and you're making justifications for even doing wrong things to people and not fulfilling your duty to be just. You're doing this because you need to pay the rent.
Yes.
You're doing this because you're mad at your wife, so you see another woman, not to mention 72 of them, and you go running after that. And I'm going to talk more on the houris also next week, so people can understand what that actually is speaking to.
We need to expand on that a little bit.
Yeah.
And to explore the appeal to the soul, so that people really understand how destructive this thing is.
Yeah, but they don't want Muslims to know. They put a very slick translation or interpretation into the Quran that causes most Muslims to not even want to know what the soul is. They tell you that the Quran says that of the soul, very little is known. So Muslims take that as meaning that Allah doesn't want us to know about the soul. So we don't investigate the soul.
There couldn't be anything further from the truth. There's a vast literature.
Yeah.
Vast literature on the human soul.
First of all, it's not, it doesn't say the nafs. See, if you're not reading the Arabic, you're going to miss this.
Yes.
It didn't say of the nafs, very little is known or can be known. It says of the ruh. That's different. But for some reason, everywhere else in the Quran, they translate the ruh as spirit. But in this particular passage, they translate it as soul.
No,
so I believe they're intentionally mixing up the meanings.
That's intentional. Yeah. That's wicked.
Yes.
That's evidence of wickedness. That's
absolutely
wicked intent right there.
Those are the receipts. That's how we know.
That kind of evidence makes me angry as to why it is, and I don't want to. They're not our scholars. These other scholars.
Yeah.
Someone else's scholar. They're not my scholars.
They're not even scholars in the true sense of scholarship.
No. How can they let that fly?
Yeah.
You see, if they were true academics, true scholars, that would never fly. Would never fly. But they just let these things go right by.
That's right.
Anyway, I thank God to be part of a correctional effort, which is another reason I like this young man, the correctional officer.
He's a great guy. Yeah, I watch a lot of his video. I watch a lot of his debates.
Yes.
They're comical, actually.
So thank you once again, dear brother. Thank you so much for sharing what you've done with us today.
Appreciation is in order every time I'm with you, man. It's
Alhamdulillah. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Until next time, inshallah. Be well.
Yes, thank you.
All right.